Hello, and welcome to Thursday afternoon, the AquaStax hour, with me, Long Steve. So, jumping straight back into where I was at the end of Tuesday evening, I was doing some collision detection, more collision detection, and what I'd done mostly on my game was to try and determine whether or not, no, what am I talking about? Need to think. Got a bit of a cold at the moment, so I might sound a bit bunged up. I do apologise for that. Let's dive straight in, back in again. Here we are. Right. So what I was doing was I was trying to get the mouse to pick up my block, and then I was going to move it around. And the reason for doing this is so that when I move it around, I want to do collision testing, or I want to test out carefully the triangle collision code that I'm going to write. I haven't yet written it. Of course, there's a bit of a chicken and egg situation that goes on because I'm trying to determine if my mouse pointer is within the bounds of my falling block. And to do that, I need some kind of collision detection routine, possible node contains or something like that. But I haven't written those yet. The idea is that I'm going to write that soon. Anyway, I almost got there. I got to the point where I was determining if the mouse pointer was within the grid cell that contains the falling block. So as you can see, I move my mouse pointer over this cell here, which is the one that contains the sort of bottom left anchor point of the falling block. Let me just check them on my live stream. Yep. I have a test profile and a live profile in OBS, so sometimes I do some local test streaming, just making sure I was actually live. Anyway, so that you can see that's almost there. What I was also doing, just before this stream, was looking at the math functions within the Cocos2d-JS library. And Cocos2d-JS includes a library called CasMath, which contains a number of maths functions and useful things, vectors, matrices, that kind of stuff. Looking down here, you've got plane, quaternion, ray, some utility stuff, AABB, axis-aligned bounding box. I was looking at that to see if there was anything that I might be able to use instead of writing my own separating axis theorem triangle collision routines, or rewriting the ones I wrote 10 years ago. And it looks like the AABB routines are pretty straightforward. You basically just define an axis-aligned bounding box with two vectors, vec3, so it looks like it's in 3D, and then it just does a bit of contains point, min and max, x and y, that kind of stuff. Nothing particularly complicated here at all. So I'm not going to worry too much about using that. Let's close this file off. I was looking in utility as well. That just has, well, actually it just has epsilon, whatever that is, and a square and an almost equal function. Back to where is tile? Plane. So this is some planar stuff. Not too worried about that. Where am I now? Back to my own game. Right, here we go. So I was in game and I defined a constant move mouse block, and when this is true, it allows me to use my mouse pointer to move the block around. So I got to the point where I was able to highlight one grid cell. I think I want to expand this a little bit so that then I can click the mouse and pick up the block. So we'll do that first. I won't worry too much about accurate mouse picking yet. I don't really need it. The purpose of this is just for figuring out whether or not I can move the block around with the mouse cursor. So to complete this logic properly, here we are. This is what I was left to do. Test if the mouse moves over the falling block. And down in here it sets it visible to true. So this is the true case, and what I want to do is move the falling block to the position of my mouse pointer at this point. So self dot, we want to do it if the mouse pointer is pressed. Now, I did this the other day, but then I commented out the code. Here we go, self dot mouse pressed. So if self.mouse pressed, and I think I'm going to have to remember what the mouse button is. let's just do a quick search for that. Mouse button, no. What about left button? Nope. Button left. There it is. It's cc.event mouse.button left. Why won't that copy? Never mind. So, yes. Getting confused by left mouse button because I have my mouse on my left hand, so it's probably going to be the right mouse button. But we'll see. If self.mousepress.mouse button left. self.block.set position, and I want self. Do I want self.mouse grid pause? I might as well try that for now. Let's just try that, see what happens. Aha. It works just about, but I can only move it around within the block. Of course, I've just realized that it doesn't matter at all whether I have any of this collision testing going on, does it? Must have been a bit late on a Tuesday evening, and I was trying to be too clever. So all I need to actually do is, if I don't even need to test any of this stuff, do I? I just want don't really even need that, do I? All I'm doing, click the mouse, and I can move the block around. How simple is that? I don't know why I didn't even think of that before. Right, ooh, lovely, look at that. It's colliding. If I move the block off the edge of the grid, it triggers the collision function, and it goes nuts. Lovely. Okay. Let's just put a guard against that down here. If mouse block move, so right at the bottom, test to see if it can move, new block. In fact, we don't even need to care about this. Test to see if the block can move sideways. Bit of an odd paste there. Right, and we're in. So now, hopefully, the moving it around will do nothing. Oh. Ah, there we go. If not, you can just drag it around. Excellent. Right, now I need to put some data within the grid, so then I can I still twist it around? Ah, no, I can't. Actually, I would quite like to be able to do that. I want to be able to rotate the block. That was me commenting out this bit of code here, isn't it? Yeah, I probably don't want the whole lot. I just want this bit here commented out. If I'm got to test my collision. Oh, hi, live coding TV support. Good to see you. Oh, and JC as well. Oh, how's it going? Long time no see. Hope you had a good Christmas and New Year. Right, where was I? I was just looking to check my bit of code that guards against my using the mouse pointer. Here we go. Yes. So I've been doing a bit more collision testing and got some good stuff going on. Now I'm just about to write the code which does the proper triangle collision testing, which will allow me to do blocks sliding around, hopefully, and slotting into position really carefully. And in order to do that, I've just put in a bit of code which allows me to move the block around using my mouse pointer. So I did this on Tuesday on my last stream, and I can let it go. Yeah, there it is. Can I still rotate it? No, I can't rotate it. That's unusual. I thought I was just going to... If I change this bit of configuration, sort of debug config, you can see what I did last time. So the blocks can drop, they can rotate, and they land on each other quite nicely now. I can drop them over, and they won't rotate and just get stuck on the edges. And get lots of purple blocks. There we go. Can I slot that one in? I don't expect I can. No, not quite. But they do slot over each other like that, which is pretty nice. But there are some glitches still. So if I get another point, yeah, these points will slide over each other because of the way the code works. It's not choosing to collide at that point. So I'm hopefully fixing that now. When are you going to finish the 3D? I'm not going to do anything in 3D. It's all going to be 2D. I might use some 3D functions just to make it look snazzy at the end of the day. But it's all going to be 2D. Anyway, let's go back to turning this on. So my test code, what I want to do is move the block around, but I want to be able to rotate it still. Why is it not rotating? Okay. So... I know what I'm doing. Oh, when 2D game I meant. Oh, 2D game, of course, yes. Oh, hi, Tupakung, good to see you. So I'm doing this, what, 2 hours a week, something like that, maybe 2.5 when it adds up if I do a stream that lasts for an hour and 10 minutes or something like that. There we go, I was pressing the wrong key. The down key doesn't do anything, but the up key rotates, and I can move it around with my mouse. So 2 hours a week, and I looked at my stream just now, and I've done just under 30 hours, so I'm going to hit 30 hours by the end of today, hopefully. Hi, Rock is Life, good to see you. So just under 30 hours, it's pretty good. I think I've done pretty well for just under 30 hours. That's less than a working week still, if I'd have been doing this full time. And I've got what appears to be an almost playable game. You can watch the blocks come down, you can rotate them, and you can even slot them together. Will that do that? Yes, that slots there quite nicely. In certain configurations, it's not all perfect yet. So my goal is to complete it by the end of the year. It's a bit like building the Eiffel Tower out of matchsticks. It's not going to be a particularly fast hobby. It's going to be a slow burner. But we'll see. We'll give it a couple of months, see how far I've gone by then, and then if I need to pick up speed, then I will, assuming I've got the time to do that. Let's see if that one slots there nicely. Yeah, I could play this for hours, just as it is. Will that slot in? Yes. Excellent. Anyway, so it's definitely going to be a slow burner, but we're getting there. So now we're going to look at some interesting collision detection. Actually, no, the first thing I've got to do is put something in the grid to collide with. At the moment, I've only got one block. Let's do. Oh, hi, Born to Reborn. Good to see you. So we want to stick a few things in the grid. Let's just do it up here. And I suppose I can just do a grid function that says, oh, hi, Jimmy Code Chef, good to see you. Cool name. Are you a real chef or just a code chef? It's an interesting analogy, cooking and code, isn't it? You often find cooking terms used with coding, like brewing code or, I don't know, making, cooking, that kind of stuff. Mixing ingredients, yeah, you mix things around in code quite a bit, don't you? You add things from different places, you borrow some stuff, mix a bit of your own code in, create something new. You never quite know till it comes out the other end whether it's actually going to be any good. Right, now I was completely distracting myself there. I want to let's see, what I want to do is just get grid position for point. No, I'm trying to basically create some blocks within the grid automatically. Let's try and do something like block list. That's my array, isn't it? Block list. And what I want to do is stick some numbers in there. I could do it by adding some insert block into grid. Right, let's do that. Let's do, where's new block? There it is, new block. So we do that. And then we position it, and then, ooh, hi Tupkung, good to have you following, thanks very much indeed. With any luck, I've spotted the follow request on my window over here on my PC. Tim will recognize it in a minute, and we'll get some fireworks. Tim being my bot. Yeah, here we go. So I want to create, let's have a few rt equals 0, temp is less than 10, t++, ooh, and create a new block. I've got a bit of a cold today, my nose is a bit bunged up, so I hope I'm sounding okay. I listened to myself the other day and it was a bit sort of muted. So do say if I'm not very easy to understand. So where am I going? Just do a random block, and then we do self.grid insert block into grid temp block. Let's just see what that does. It's going to slap a load of blocks at 0, 0, I expect. No, it's going to crash. See what I did wrong there. Self.grid, have I even created it yet? Yes. Temp block. Try the debugger. Oh, can't read grid size of undefined. Oh, have I I've probably done a bunch of things before initializing the grid. No, I haven't definitely got the grid initialized up here. Create tile at rotation. So I've literally just borrowed new block, haven't I? Random number, block size, set position. This is a great way to start. What's it when you come out again? It's saying cannot read property grid size of undefined. Self.grid, blah blah blah. Did I get something wrong? Yep, that's all working still. Can still move that around. I wonder if something is relying on. Yeah, it's definitely not quite working right, is it? Class constructor block.js. So it's going in here. Make a set of draw nodes corresponding to each rotation. Gonna have to see what's going on. There might be a bug in my code that I haven't noticed yet. Game. Here we are. Was it that bit that broke? No, yeah, it was that bit that broke. So creating a new block isn't doing exactly what I think it's doing. So right now I'm completely lost in the cool stack somewhere. How odd. Why can't I create a block by doing that? New block works. Self.newBlock0. I suppose I could just call that, couldn't I? I don't want to waste too much time. Self.newBlock. Does that return the actual block? It doesn't, does it? Ah, I wonder if something... Yeah, I'm probably calling that and something else is going wrong. It's not meant to be called by itself. Self.newBlock. Then I can do... How are you testing the game? Well, at the moment, I haven't really got much of a game to test. With an emulator. No, I'm writing it in JavaScript, so literally just running it in Chrome. So whenever I hit my hotkey and click at it, it pops up in Chrome. And if you go back to my very first or second stream, I think it was, if the videos are still available, you can see how I set up the environment using a gulp task. Gulp is a JavaScript or Node.js tool which allows you to run things automatically when you save files. And whenever I save any file, it automatically serves them up using I can't even remember the thing, it was so long ago. The thing that, live reload, that's it. The thing that tells the browser to reload automatically. So whenever I hit save, the browser reloads automatically. All I do is hit my macro key to jump to Chrome, and there it is. In the long run, I should probably start writing some unit tests, maybe even some clever tests using one of the browser test suites. I can't remember the name of them now, but there's definitely a couple of browsers you can get, or a couple of tools you can get, which will basically run a copy of Chrome within a controllable environment that doesn't have a window or anything like that. So you can use it for testing automatically. So you can run your code inside a browser window, simulate mouse clicks, events, that kind of stuff, see what happens, check for crashes. So I might try doing that at some point in the future. At the moment, I'm just knocking a load of stuff together, getting things working. And since it's only me, there's no QA at the moment. Then I haven't got to worry too much about whether it crashes. What was I going to do? Let's go self.block. Will that work? Yes, so that sticks a load of blocks in that position up there. That's useful to know. Right. Can I choose where the blocks go? Not by calling new block with anything particular, but I could call self.block.setPosition something interesting. I wonder, I might add a couple of additional parameters in here that just... So it automatically spawns in a particular place, doesn't it? Yes. I might pass grid X and grid Y as so if type of grid does not equal number, then we want to do grid X equals, and what I'm doing is I'm using block size, blocks y divided by 2, there we go. So blocks grid X equals blocks y divided by 2, and we can use grid X down here. As a continuation to your question about using an emulator, if I decide to use any, or if I decide to create a mobile version of the game, so iOS or Android, I'll obviously be using iPhone and Android emulators to test those builds, because Cocos2d-JS will let me do that. Oh, thanks for the follow, username 2048. Much appreciated. Then what do? We work out spawn y down here. So spawn y if aq.mouseMoveBlock. Ah, we're using this again down here, right? cc.windsize.height. So that's going to confuse things because I'm in my mouse move block mode at this point. Let's just cheat and do type of grid y is not equal. Ooh, what was that? I'm so engrossed in the code, I keep missing people as they arrive, so I do apologize for not saying hi. Number, and I want grid y equals that. cc.windsize.height. Yeah, I don't have grid if I do that, cc.winsize.height divided by block size, then I can do down here, I can do grid y times block size, and for some reason I'm going to leave that like it is for now. Let's just do here. So grid X I want tump, and grid Y we'll try 0. See what happens. It should give me a row of blocks down the bottom. Nope, it hasn't. That's probably because I've not got this bit of code right here. Game. Yeah, it's definitely doing that. Grid X and grid Y. Of course I'm still doing block size times grid X. I want spawn Y, I want grid Y, don't I? So I don't want that. Why is that not giving me the correct positioning? Grid X, grid Y. So where are we here? We're on grid X is 7. Yeah. Grid Y is 21. Random type. So so we're doing that. So that's ignoring the grid Y, isn't it? And then we're doing grid X times block size, grid Y times 50. So it's just going to stick them all at the same place, isn't it? Why is grid X 7? Have I done a stupid JavaScript thing? Let's go back up to here. So that's the first one. It's been a long day. Let's try that again. So we continue now, we're coming into this loop here. Right. Okay, so grid X and grid Y are now... The grid X is still 7. Any of you guys watching this, I'd appreciate a pointer every now and again when I do something stupid like pass the parameters to the wrong function. So new block, there we go. So what is my new block function? It's type X and Y. Okay, right, so I just want type undefined, I suppose. For now, that'll give me random blocks. There they all are, nicely, nicely tucked down the bottom there. So that's a few things stuck in place. What I kind of want to do is draw something that allows me to actually do the collision testing. So, hi Avaja, good to see you. One bit of thing wasn't quite working was this thing here, wasn't it? cc.winsize.height minus grid size. Does Cocos2d-JS compile to C++ binaries? Yes, kind of. The Cocos2d-JS framework, when you use it on iPhone and Android or non-JavaScript platforms, so what I'm writing here is JavaScript and I'm running it in Chrome and it's all running as JavaScript, so there's no native code involved. But if I was to create the project and target it for iPhone or Android or Windows PC or native Mac as well, it creates a native project, and it includes within that project the SpiderMonkey JavaScript engine that comes with Firefox, and implements all of the API. So the API I'm using for Node.js, sorry, not Node.js, Cocos2d-JS. So all of this cc.node is why I got confused, because the cc.node is the kind of main one that you use to create 2D things on the screen and do stuff with them. All of this is implemented in C++, and the JavaScript code jumps down into native code using a set of native bindings. They call them JavaScript bindings. So it's quite complicated. It basically runs your JavaScript code that you write, but it runs it, and at runtime runs actual C++ code. And that boils down to OpenGL on iOS and Android devices, which is pretty nice, just as it uses WebGL on the web browsers. I've used it for quite a long time, and it works really well, actually. It lets you write JavaScript code end to end. When you're actually writing it on a native device, like an iPhone, debugging can be pretty hairy. It's much better if you're going to start a project in Cocos2d, and you want to write it in JavaScript, write it in native JavaScript and use Chrome or your preferred web browser as the debugger. If you're writing it and you're testing it in a iOS simulator, it's really difficult to get at the JavaScript code and step through it. Although there is a Cocos development environment these days, which I've read about recently. I haven't used it yet, but apparently it lets you do JavaScript debugging on devices, which would be pretty nice. Products. I think it's called Cocos Creator. Is that it? Yes, it's a complete game development tool. I won't go into that. Have a look if you're interested. You can definitely use JavaScript, and I'm pretty sure they've done a bit of debugging work on that. But it's still quicker to use a browser stuff. So when you get to the APK file or app file, you have your native code. Yes, you do. You actually build native APKs for APK for Android, .apps for iOS. Most of the projects that I've released over the last few years for my commercial work has been iOS and Android apps written in Cocos2d-JS, uploaded to the App Store as native binaries. It's really good. Early on, if you remember, Apple didn't like script code being used in iOS apps. You couldn't write an iOS app and upload it to the App Store and have it made available if you were using a scripting language like JavaScript or Lua or something else. But they changed the rules some time ago, the meaning that you can. But you still, I'm pretty sure you still can't have actual modifiable scripting code on an iOS app. So you can't have downloadable JavaScript, although technically you can. If you follow Apple's guidelines and they find out you're doing it, they'll block your app and reject you for it. Anyway, back to the actual development. What was I about to do? I was about to just put my blocks in the right place, wasn't I? And shuffle down the, let's see, yes, you can, if you want to use you don't have to wrap it into WebView. You can still use the SpiderMonkey or some other virtual machine if you want to. But you can do quite a lot now. They've opened up the APIs for web views and their JavaScript engine pretty well. Totally lost track. Don't worry. It's great chatting. It's always good talking to somebody who understands a bit about it. Have you done any work yourself? I see you obviously understand a bit about iOS and Android. Be good to know if you've done any development work on it before. Let's see. Grid Y. So if mouse move block and what am I going to do? For now, I'm just going to cheat and comment that out because I'm not even using Spawn Y, am I? Yeah, I've done some native stuff with Java and Objective-C. Yeah, you always have to do a bit actually. Even though we've done a lot of game development using JavaScript and Cocos2d-JS, you always have to end up with a bit of native code at the end of the day. You have to understand the development processes for the native system. So you still have to understand Xcode, and you still have to understand Eclipse and the Android SDKs and things like that. And if you want to do anything platform specific, like in-app purchases or using the GPS or things like that, you have to drop your JavaScript code into native methods that you write as well. So it's always a good place to start. I want to get my my block. I wonder, why don't I just ditch that completely? And it wasn't even doing anything either. I was writing a bit of code that was never actually used. And pass in a value down here for my block. New block, 0 blocks, block size, there's blocks, wide, 5x2, and then, let's see, blocks high, isn't it? Blocks high minus 10, what will that do? That leaves me with the block in the middle of the screen. Excellent, I can move it around. Ah, of course it sticks that one in the grid, doesn't it? I don't even need that, do I? There we go. Right, now we've got at least got something I can collide with. Oh, excellent. Somebody rated me. Much appreciated. No one's used that for a while, actually. I'd totally forgotten it was even there. There we go. I've got a project I've set myself as well for the new year, which is to include some kind of lighting effect. I've got I haven't got a, can't reach it at the moment, but I've got myself a NeoPixel strip that I bought from Adafruit with 60 RGB LED pixels on a flexible strip. And I've got an Arduino and a couple of components to hook it up. And I'm going to like have it across the top of my monitors, or maybe down on my desk, or even wrapped around my neck, or something crazy like that, so that when somebody gives me a rating or follows me on live coding here, I can have my strip will do lots of flashing and colourful visual effects. I've got the components, haven't got around to building it yet. I thought I might have had some time over Christmas, but I didn't. I was too busy. So I'll keep you posted on how that's going. Anyway, right. So now we want to finally get around to actually doing some collision detection. So I had a lot of code that was written a long time ago, and it uses the separating axis theorem, which I've tried reading about, but I haven't found anything that I understood. So I'm just going to try and go through what I did before and see if it works. And ultimately, what I ended up with was collide two squares together, one moving from the falling block and one static within the grid. So I suppose I can simplify all the stuff I've just done and have two blocks. So we want two blocks, and I want that little square, which is tile. I think it's that one there, isn't it? It's tile number 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. Tile 3. There we go, got two of those, and I can move one around, and there's one in the corner there. Also, let's get rid of the mouse highlight business. Don't need that. There we go. Why is that still highlighted? Ah, there it is. Right, 2 blocks, and I can move them into each other. Let's stick them in the middle of the screen. Ooh. Right, there they are. So, collide object. I'm going to rewrite this code, but I'm going to try and figure out what it's doing. So the first thing it does is a boundary box check. So this is quite straightforward. And I've even done a bit of that already. So I did collide. I've got collide block here. Tests for the general collision case. So I obviously did boundary box testing before, and it was done in a rather odd-looking way to work out how far within each block the collision was occurring, by the looks of it. So it's kind of taking the points and subtracting them, so you end up with deltas across the horizontal and vertical to determine whether or not something is, if it's positive or negative. It looks like if it's positive, then there's going to be some sort of collision, i.e. one object is penetrating another one by a certain amount. And then it actually works out the projection vectors as in whether it's left to the left or right, up or down, and it does pass these values into the sub-function that it then calls. And I don't do that myself yet. I just used a pretty naive test. So collide block with data. So we do a bit of is square, which I think I used to do using a function called that, which does that here. So it's looking for 13, 31, 24, and 42. 13, 31, 24. It looks like I've rewritten that there. And then we do some of this testing. And we loop over all these blocks. And grid index and cell. So grid index is something within. That's right. We're not actually doing. We're doing it. This testing was done purely by test if the given block at the new position will collide with the tile. Where does the position get used? Yeah, we're just testing blocks within the grid. We're not actually using absolute sort of the position where the block is around. So it's just testing those red blocks that you're seeing. If I do something like collide block with grid, let's see if I can change the color when it collides. So we're calling collide block with grid here. If any of these collisions occur. Oh, hi Nabari, good to see you. Test to see if the footing block can move sideways. So we're doing all this collision testing stuff anyway. Let's just do down the bottom here. Is set color going to work? I hope so. cc dot color 255, 255, 255. Nice purpley color. Let's just see what happens. No, nothing there. cc.log collide. can just about spot the collide is actually going up when it moves in place. Yep, it is definitely doing that, right? So this block set color is not quite doing what I expect, but let's see. It's because it's drawn using a draw node that has, or a set of draw nodes, isn't it? What I'll do is, I'm kind of skirting around the issue. I'm not actually getting any collision testing done. This is what I did at the end of the last stream. I decided to sort of set my code up to the point where I can, I'm comfortable writing the collision testing code. And that was going to be moving the block around with the mouse, so I could test all sorts of different scenarios. Let's just do a collision indicator block. And down in here. Ooh, hi Andy Larkin, good to see you. Self.collision test equals draw node. I want to borrow. Tile. Forgotten how I create draw nodes. Nope. There we go. Nice and simple. And it's draw, isn't it? Yes. So self.collision test equals cc.drawNode, and then it's dot draw rect p00 block size, and then self.grid dot add child. Set color. Actually, let's have it slightly transparent. And then we'll hide it. I should have left the mouse highlight node in place, shouldn't I? Just reuse that bit of code. So here we go, right. Self.collision test.set visible true, else false, or gals, whatever that is, and then set position self.block.get position. Right, quite a bit of code there. Let's see if it all works in one go. Well, it doesn't crash, but it doesn't appear to be visible. Let's see if it... Do I want to add it to the grid or the grid panel? Possibly even the game panel, that might be the better place to add it. Why is that breaking? Is that because collide block returns true? This is where I have to remind myself of yes, here we go. 0 for no collision, 99 for a collision. So if it equals if stuff.collide block shouldn't be colliding at that point. Do I need to pass anything as new rotation? Oh, I think it accepts undefined values, doesn't it? Jump in here and see what it's doing. Of course, it's my I'm actually colliding those grid squares, aren't I? But they shouldn't be triggered. Yeah, no collisions going there. There it is. So that's where it's colliding based on my current implementation of collide block. Collision test set position block pos. Okay. Collision test set visible true. So why can't I see that square? I'm going bonkers. I need draw rect isn't quite as I remember it, is it? It's going to be tile. This is draw poly. Let's jump in and have a look at this. I seem to spend most of my time. That's the trouble with JavaScript is. I was talking about debugging earlier. You spend most of your time wondering why something isn't working, even though there's no crashing going on, and there's no compiler that says you've called this with the wrong functions or this function isn't defined with these parameters. There's all sorts of earlier on you can call functions with the wrong parameters, with no parameters, and all that kind of stuff, and nothing warns you. Nothing says you're doing it wrong, and you just have to kind of just basically spend your time digging around until you figure it out. Do whatever you want, see if I care. Yeah, that's exactly exactly how it goes. I mean, it's hard enough with a debugger, and if you try and do it natively on an iPhone or an Android device with no debugger, you literally have to put print line statements in all over the place, or console.log statements to see what's going on. I was after draw rect, and it's fine, but I need fill color as the third parameter, don't I? Or else I won't get a color at all. So I want cc.color 2550, 255, 128. Now let's see if that gives me a purpley block. There it is, and it's purpley when the collision function returns true. That's right. Make it slightly brighter. So at the moment, the collision is only occurring because the code in my collide block routine, which is somewhere down here. Grid, is it grid? Yeah. Collide block, this one. It's only doing it based on actual grid square overlappings. And the reason for that was because the blocks, when you actually move them left and right in the game, they only ever jump from grid square to grid square. So I didn't bother with that before. So if I did it there and moved it down, it should be fine, as long as it's still on the same grid square. There it is. But if I move it across to the left, the bottom left anchor is now in that grid square there. So that the collide block test is testing that grid square with that one to see if there's anything in there. And there isn't, so there's no collision. But now it's kind of working. So that's going okay. This bit works because it's actually testing those two red cells above and below. If I tweak, I could tweak my test function to call, let's see, show the grid squares that collision will be tested for. Here we go. Get grid index positions for block collision. I remember fiddling with this a couple of streams ago. And where'd it go? There it is. And it only ever add one above, push the index directly. I mean, I could add one to the right, and that would actually would include it as well. Add one above to cover the block dropping between grid rows. And if I did x is less than grid size plus 1, it would cover a larger square. So now what I'm getting now is the collision test will be called for every grid cell that's partially covered by the block, which is pretty good. Unless it, I mean, when it gets exactly on that square there, it shouldn't really cover the additional ones because my code is a bit naive. But it now works. Oh, it's interesting. It's not doing it there. Ah, of course, it's only testing the left hand, the one on the left. Anyway, I'm distracting myself. What I want to do now is write a new collision detection function that actually tests for triangles and blocks overlapping each other properly. At least now I've got the framework within which I can write that code. So I'm gonna stick it in grid because I've got a few useful grid functions already here. Collide block. I'm going to stick it down the bottom. Collide block, and I'm going to call it collide object. Collide two squares. It's weird. I don't know why I called it collide objects before, but I think it's going to be something similar to that. So if I write it the same as what I did before, now I won't confuse myself. At least in the short term. I'll confuse myself in the long term because I'll totally forget what it was meant for. But collide objects, and what we have is the moving object, the moving position, the grid object, the grid position, and a report boolean, which I think I probably used in a number of places, that passes the value back, or actually sets the value of collision information into some of the blocks. So I won't worry about that for now. So let's do this. Ooh. I tap too fast and my cold fingers fumble around on the keyboard. So I want these methods. So moving pos x var moving pos y, and then we want grid object. I could pass in a position, but I'm just gonna do that for the minute to try and keep my function the same as it used to be. var. Right. So collide objects. So it takes two single grid cell sized, I guess, objects, blocks, and performs the collision testing. And what we end up with is a whole load of code which does some, which returns either an axis collision or, I seem to remember, is it a point collision or slope collision? Oh, in fact, my helper code was telling me that. Oh, now it's gone. Set results. No, there it is. So we've got axis collision or slope collision. And I'm going to borrow this bit of code and try and figure out what it's doing. It's pretty cheap, this. Copy and paste. But boundary box checking first. So tx8, I've no idea what tx, probably temporary. So all my old variables used to be called 8, and that was because I was using fixed point maths, and everything was shifted up by 8 bits. So 0 up to 1 was actually 0 to 255, or 255, yeah, and 1 was 256. So all these 8 variables were for fixed point maths. Let's get rid of them for now. And we've got txw, so triangle unit size. Now I know that that's block size, and triangle unit size 7 would have been half, so shifted up by 7, so that would actually have been half. So I'm just going to find my block size variable. Pardon me. I use triangle unit size in a number of places, don't I? That was triangle unit size was the name or the variable name of my old block size, but we'll call it triangle unit size. There's aq_config.block size divided by 2, and for some reason that's exactly the same. Where are we? Oh, it's gone 4 o'clock, so I'm going to finish off soon. I might just see if I can quickly knock this bit of code out to do something. So delta x, moving pos x minus tx, okay, and penetration depth into x. So txw minus triangle unit size 7. Let's just make something new and call it half block size. I tried Googling for some of this code to see if I'd borrowed it from somewhere, because quite often you find bits of code that do what you want, or tutorials and things on the net, and you rewrite them using your own notation and your own things. I couldn't find anything, although I refrained from searching for penetration depth in X. I thought that if that's a comment I didn't write, it might be somewhere else on the net. You know, you might find a bit of code on GitHub. But I decided to not search for that because it might have been a bit dodgy. Anyway, half block size, and then we've got half block size, and plus 128 is a half in fixed point maths, so I'm going to put 0.5 in there. And abs. Oh, now do we have an abs function? I bet we don't. Math.abs if I'm lucky. There is there's some maths functions here. I'm just going to do this quickly. Function abs. So, dead simple function, return x is less than 0, you return minus x, or you return x because it's positive. And we'll just do that. I'll make that work. So what it's doing is it's subtracting the x value of the moving block, sorry, the x value of the grid from the x position of the moving block, and then if it's getting a negative number, it knows that it's going to be one side of the block colliding with another side of the fixed block. And then what does it do? Is that negative? Yes, because it's not, px is half block size plus a half. Okay, kind of vaguely understanding my old code, but it's difficult to describe, so you'll just have to bear with me as I bumble or bladder to myself. Half block size. So that's definitely that. Abs dy, and that's not shifted up by 8. So object may be colliding with the tile. Call the shape-specific collision function. So this is testing whether or not it's colliding in x and y. It could be both. And I happen to know that both my moving objects are squares at the moment, so it's this particular if statement that's going to get triggered. And I can, although I've already written it, I might pinch it again. Somewhere there's an is square routine, wasn't there? Where did I get that from? There it is square cell. Yeah, I'm going to cheat. I'm just going to copy and paste for now. I'll refactor this later. Story of my life, that. If you've watched any of the streams before, you know the phrase I'll refactor this later gets said a lot. I'm in a loop, aren't I? Oh no, I'm not in a loop, so I don't need to worry about defining things in a loop. Square. Right, so moving obj and grid obj are actually the integer numbers that define the cell type. So using my triangles, which are up at the top of tile here, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, with 31 being a square that's filled in like that with that triangle and that triangle, and a 24 being one that's filled in with that triangle and that triangle. So I happen to know that this will be what's returned so far. An axis collision, that was a static that sort of says basically there's a collision along the flat axis, left or bottom. It was the additional one, slope collision, as if it's collision along a slope, and when a slope collision occurs, then obviously blocks have to slide around. For some reason I had bit flags over here, one shifted up by 8, one shifted up by 9. I could use that again, couldn't I? Let's borrow these old constants and put them in. I'm just going to put them up here for now. So that's going to return something. One shifted up by 8 bits, which is 256. And I can I'll just comment these bits out for now because I know that there's no function that exists yet. So we've got that. Now if I jump back into game, I want to switch this out. In the, is it update? Where are we? Yes. In the update method, I'll switch this collision function to be not collide block, it's collide objects. And so the moving object in this case, moving obj, is equal to the block, but it's the tile details of that block. How do I get those out? Is tile num? Did I have a get tile data? Yes, I did. So I want get tile data, aq.tiledata, and it's this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another function into block if I haven't already written it. Get rotation, get tile num, get tile data. I'm going to call it get object data. And what it is return self.getTileData, and that returns tile data is an array of arrays, isn't it? So aq.tiledata, no, aq.tiledata is just the actual one of these, isn't it? So it's .grid data, tile data, .grid data. Then I want to do the rotation. So actually I might as well just do this. Self.rotation. And then it's going to be the position in the tile I'm testing, but at the moment I'm simplifying things and I'm just using this one square tile, so it's going to be 31 that it comes out with. So get object data. So is that. Ooh. Now we want moving pos x and y. So let's do moving pos. Thanks for continuing watching me, guys. I do appreciate it. It's nice to know that there are one or two people there. Oh, and someone new joining as well. PVL Sport. Hi, good to see you. Don't forget you can follow me on Live Coding TV and get notified when I stream. My regular streams are Tuesday evenings at 8 PM UK time and Thursday afternoons at 3 PM UK time. And I usually only stream for about an hour, but I'm just hurrying to try and get this last bit of collision testing, well actually the first bit of collision testing code done. And then we'll call it a day, and then we'll jump back into it next Tuesday. Also, if you follow me, you get some fireworks on the screen. Where are we going? We want collide object, and I want moving obj, moving pos.x, moving pos.y, and now I've got to call the grid data, so I need to get the grid position and the data for that. Right, so what am I colliding against? This is interesting. So it gets a little bit more complicated all of a sudden, but let's see. I had this function which returns the grid index positions for block collision. Now, can I use that? Well, let's do that. Indexes. So grid indexes is equal self.grid index positions for block collision, self.block, and then new pos new rotation. And can I pass undefined values into these? Get grid index for point. No, I can't. I need to actually pass in the position, but it doesn't matter. So it's block position. Shift that along a bit so I can see what's going on. So that's going to give me the grid indexes of where to collide, and then if I loop over those for I can use I, can't I? I equals 0. So my grid, did I write a get grid index for node, get grid index for point, get grid position for index? Ah, that's a good one, that'll do. I also wanted the get grid block nodes. I think I probably wanted something like game grid. I can probably just reference it directly, but I might write a function. Self.grid.get grid index position, get grid position for index, and that's going to be grid indexes I. So that's grid block pos, isn't it? And then we want grid block obj in some way, don't we? Grid block obj, and that's going to equal, I mean, I know it's going to be self.grid.grid data grid indexes I. Just check it is grid data. Which editor am I using? I'm sure you've asked me that before, JC, or somebody has. I'm using an editor called SlickEdit, which I've used for many, many years, and it has its foibles, and it doesn't quite recognize JavaScript and the various complicated ways of JavaScript objects and overriding and class hierarchies and things like that. So its autocomplete is a bit wacky, but I just like it, and I've used it for many years. It's a commercial tool, and I bought a license many years ago, so it's just something I use because I pay for it. And taking your time to learn a new editor can be quite cumbersome. What was I going to look for? I was just looking for grid data, wasn't I? Game grid, that's what I called it. Game grid. I know I shouldn't do this. Don't do this. And to remind me to change later. So now the collision detection is going to be moving pos and then grid block obj, and then it's going to be, it's actually going to be grid block obj and FF, because I think I store some additional stuff in that grid. Then it's going to be grid block pos X and Y. Right, and if this works, I'll be amazed. Right, there's that. I need that. So set position block pos. We actually want moving pos now. I changed it, didn't I? Right. Chances of this working slim to none. See what I did wrong. aq.grid not a constructor. So syntax error probably in grid. Okay, did I get something wrong there? Ah, you don't put vars in JavaScript function declarations, do you? Right. Lots of errors. And of course I've used int all over the place. There you go, that's a bit better. Unnecessary semicolon. Oh yeah. Actually, I could do var abs equal that, just to match my other function declaration. Bounds is defined but never used. Oh, I'm not worried about those. Collision is not defined. Ah, okay. And back in here, I guess that should be not equal to 0, but it'll work for now. That's a horrible bit of code. All that formatting is not very good. But so it's not crashing anymore, but it isn't quite working either. So let's see how long. Oh, I've had an hour and a half already. I'm going to have a quick sip of tea. Bear with me. Let's see. Right. Debug in main. Well, let's just dive into my new collide objects method and see what actually is going on. Right. Aha. Grid pos X is not a number. Right. So that's 0. That's interesting. That shouldn't be 0 for a start. Moving object is 49, which is good. Pos X and pos Y are reasonable numbers. It's the grid object and grid pos X and Y that are obviously broken at the moment. So what's going on there? Let's break here. So grid indexes. Okay, so I obviously it looks like I returned the cell, and there's one with my 1 in it. Block cell 1. Why has it got 1? Block cell. Interesting. What did that mean? It's the cell block for the actual the bit I'm looking at. Interesting. Right. So all I really want here is grid index. Hey, almost worked. Well, ooh, right. So something is colliding there. That looks reasonable, but it's missing certain collision detections there, isn't it? I wonder why that is. Possibly because... Ooh, hi Aslan, good to see you. I'm almost at the end of the stream here, but at least it's not crashing anymore, and it's doing something useful. My collide block with grid data, so my new collide objects function. So here's where it's doing the X and the Y. Object may be colliding with a tile, call the shape specific function, yeah. So this is my old code. I'm going to have to try and figure out what it's actually doing. It looks like it's probably not... This bit of code here isn't quite what I expected it to be. It's testing X and Y and doing the projections, but it's only, so it's not working. It's working on the X if I go one way. That's interesting, but it's not if I go the other way until it gets right to the edge. I wonder why that is. And it's doing something there. It triggers on the bottom and then stops when it comes off. So this is presumably me not understanding my old code very well, or I'd optimized the old code for the situation where it's only used in certain ways. That's more likely to be the case, or probably a bit of both actually. Get your name in lights a few times, Aslan. I think it stops after about 3 times, although maybe because you're one of my followers, it will put your name in lights all the time. I'm not sure. You'll have to jump out and back in again just to see. It does say already greeted Aslan. Yeah, I'm just looking at the log for my bot, but it shows the greeting anyway because you're a follower. Moving POSX. This is going to take me a bit of a while to figure this out, and I've gone on for an hour and a half now, so I think I'll call it a day. It's doing something. It's definitely the start of my collision detection code, and it's doing the collision detection based on the squares. And what I want to do next is implement these functions here. So when these two aren't squares, so when I've actually got a triangle and a triangle, then I'm going to do into a different collision detection routine, which is collide. So what have I got? I had 3 of them. Collide square with triangle, collide triangle with square, and then collide triangle with triangle. I would imagine those two can be pretty similar. Let's just see if I can find where they were. Here we go. Yeah, I seem to remember this code. I must have been rather stressed when I wrote this because I just copied and pasted it and changed a few signs around. I wasn't careful enough to write it properly, but it's definitely using the separating axis theorem, which uses the dot product to determine whether or not a point is within or one side or another of a plane, and those lines being the corners at the edges of the triangle. And it uses collide square with triangle, collide triangle with triangle, and you'll notice that, so this is collide triangle with square, and collide square with collide hang on, where are we? Collide square with triangle is very similar to collide triangle with square. And I expect it's just a matter of a negative or a positive sign being swapped around somewhere. Len P is less than len N. No, that's still the same. Very interesting. They might almost be identical. Anyway, I'll leave that for another day. Digging into my old code, fun though it is, can be quite boring. I'll try and figure it out before I start the next stream. And also, I might see how many times a follower, when joining the stream, gets their name up in lights. I think actually it does it every time, but it's quick. You'll notice your thing, your fireworks popped up pretty quickly there, Aslan. So I think my bot just acknowledges the fact that you're a follower. So thank you very much. Right, it's all working, and it's a bit half-hearted at the moment. But I will definitely check this in as it is into Perforce. Sorry, I say Perforce into GitHub. Use Perforce too much, and this is only one of the few projects I use in GitHub. So I shall definitely check the code in, and next Tuesday, in the evening, I'll dig into a bit more of this collision detection code. So thanks very much for watching today. Much appreciated. Do follow me, and I'll hang around in the chat for a little bit longer once I close the stream off. Let me dive into my intro scene here. Thanks very much, MetaFrogster. Good to see you. Maybe talk to you again soon. Cheerio, everybody. Have a good week.